Nagatsi hinu nickname had Ketchikan, Kelsey Thompson aya achsai. My name is Kelsey Thompson. I'm a coordinator on our Ancestors Echoes language program here at Sealaska Heritage Institute. At this time, please take a moment to silence your devices and remember no food or drink is allowed in the clan house. It's my honor today to welcome you to the first lecture of our three-part lecture series. Each year, our Ancestors Echoes, Haa Shuká and Tlingit language program holds a lecture series at Sealaska Heritage Institute with the aim of uniting our languages, uplifting our cultural leaders, and discussing language instruction, programs, and the resources that are available for student support. Honoring our ancestors and future generations is our theme this year. Over the next 3 lectures, we will hear discussion on the methods learners and teachers use to develop strong foundations in Alaska Native languages. It is through the dedicated study, consistent practice, and the support network of our Alaska Native students and teachers that we build a strong foundation for learning Native languages in Southeast Alaska. Language teachers foster profound connections with their students, integrating language and culture to develop deeper connections to Alaska Native heritage and oral traditions. Anchored in the past, present, and future, Alaska Native languages will continue to inspire and educate, to live on through the hard work of our language community. Together, we preserve enduring connections with our ancestors when we remember them in our daily lives and ceremonial practices, and when we honor their sacrifices. This lecture series is part of an effort to educate students on the challenges of studying heritage languages and to prepare them for this great work. Today we will gain insight into the challenges and successes of our teachers, and most importantly, remember that we are not alone. The path has been walked before. These languages, Haa Shuká and Tlingit, are the legacy of the ancestors carried through speakers today. Every time we hear them spoken, our ancestors continue to inspire us. Today, it is my special honor to introduce Skíl Jáadei Linda Schrack. She was born and raised in Southeast Alaska. She is Haida from the Shark House and a member of the Yaakjanas clan, Raven Moiety. Skíl Jáadei has a Master of Arts in Indigenous Languages and Linguistics from Simon Fraser University. She is currently a term assistant professor of Alaska Native Languages for University of Alaska Southeast and has been teaching Haa at UAS since 2014. She also serves as a member of the Sealaska Heritage Regional Language Committee. Skíl Jáadei worked for the Ketchikan Indian Community Johnson O'Malley program beginning in 2006. In 2008, she initiated the change of the program from cultural and arts to an emphasis on Tlingit, Tsimshian, and Haida language mentor-apprentice programs. While Haida is Skíl Jáadei's focus, she is also an advocate for Tsimshian and Tlingit languages and culture. Her grandparents are the late Dr. Robert Kogo and Nora Edenshaw Kogo, who were actively involved with language preservation in the 1970s. It is Skíl Jáadei's passion and life mission to continue the work of her grandparents and the others that have gone before us. It is important to her that Haida language and culture continue for generations to come. When our children speak our language, it survives. Her presentation titled Honoring Our Speakers Past, Present, and Future will honor her Haa mentors. Skíl Jáadei will also share her language journey challenges and successes of language documentation, preservation, and revitalization, giving encouragement to present and future language learners. At the end of the lecture, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. For those of us joining online, there will be a comment section that you can ask questions in. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Skíl Jáadei Linda Schrack.
How nagatsi. Haa la is Atlant is at die Gudangait lagang Dalang eith and the Hungul Aoyagang. Good people, I'm happy to be here and I'm very honored with your presence. Tla adi Guda la is, excuse me, Lasi. Gin Kilskuda Dewan da Agandina Gin Eskit U I am below you, and please forgive me if I say anything wrong or do anything wrong. I would like to acknowledge that we are holding this event on the ancestral lands of the Akwan people and their neighbors to the south, the Takuquan people, both of whom have been stewards of this land for thousands of years and still are. I would also like to thank SHI for inviting me to speak at this lecture series, honoring our ancestors and future generations. Dalangant Kilt Lagung. I was going to introduce myself, but Nagatsi did a very good job. I will possibly add some things to that as I'm talking about my elders that I had the honor and privilege of working with. But first, I would like to talk a little bit about my grandparents. Hanjat Gasandlans Dinanu Ijan, Nora Idenso Hinu Yats Hadekish Ul Kyagan, Matlai Hung Di Chunu Ijan, Dr. Robert Kogo Hinu Yats Hadekish Kyagan. Both of my grandparents, their first language was Hadkil, the Haida language, and as all the other mentors that I'll introduce you to this afternoon, Hadkil was their first language. My grandparents, they used to get up in the early morning and speak Hadkil with one another, and my brothers and I lived with them for a little while when we were growing up, and when we would get up in the morning, they would see us coming into the kitchen and then they would switch to English. At that time, they weren't, teaching the language yet, but thankfully later on in the 1970s, they were a part of a group of people that were meeting in Fairbanks and then also in Sitka at a language workshop where the elders at that time for not only Hadkil but the Tlingit and Shmelgyak languages were meeting to talk about writing systems and what they might want to use. They began to write curriculum, little booklets to help people to learn their languages. And I remember one time after the Hadkil elders, the Haida elders, had decided upon adopting a writing system, my grandparents came home, and my Chana was especially excited about it. And so he gathered a bunch of us cousins together, and it was an Indian education program at the time. They were having a summer program, and my Nana and Chana were teaching Hadkil. So my cousins and I had learned how to read and write Hadkil before we could speak any of it. But one of the things that stands out to me most with my Chana, we have 4 different K sounds in our language, and he would stand there and he would say k, k, and just made it kind of funny that he would do it. And he used to tease my Nana all the time, and that was one of the things that he liked to share with us. My Nana, she was Old Masset language speaker, and my Chana was Alaskan speaker. And whenever Chana couldn't remember anything, my Nana always helped him out with that. So they're the ones that really inspired me, and the work that they did to help to carry the language on, and from the resources that they have created in the past. It's been really helpful, not only to me, but others that are wanting to learn the Haida language, along with stories, and the first actual dictionary for Hadkil in the 1970s, they also helped out with as consultants. And it was mentioned that when I worked for the Ketchikan Indian community, I started out with the Johnson O'Malley program, which Quigai Iwans, she worked for. I should say, Aji di Hadkil Skadadala I Ijung, Quigai Iwans, Hinu Ul Kiang, Phyllis Almquist, Hinu Yats Hade Kis Ul Kiagan. Well, I got to step back, sorry. I apologize, I'm a little bit nervous. Usually when I talk about language, it just flows. I could talk hours and hours about it. So I started out with the Johnson O'Malley program, and I had just finished working on a grant project with Dr. Jordan Latchler here for SHI, and we were working on a curriculum for K-2, grade 2. And after that grant was over is when I went to work for KIC, and our staff would go into the elementary schools and teach the children for 2 weeks at a time, teach them about the culture and the arts of Tlingit, Hadkil, and Shmelgiach. The one thing that was missing, there wasn't language incorporated in the lesson plans, and so I started incorporating language, and then I started a conversation with our education director at the time, John Brown, and talked to him about how we really need to focus on our languages, on all three of them. And so it took a little bit of time, but he worked with our tribal council, and they signed a resolution in 2008 to make that switch. And so we, Quigai Iwans and I were the very first mentor-apprentice team for the Ketchikan Indian community. And then we had Martha Denny at the time with Dee Ivans, and it took us a while to find someone to begin the Shmelgiach program. And I talked to one of my friends, some of you may know her, Ashley Dow. She was working for another department at KIC, and I had talked to her about coming to work for us, and thankfully she did. Her mentor was her mother, Norma Fawcett, and she is still with the program now, and doing wonderful things, and has had opportunities with other mentors as well. So I also wanted to mention that Quigai Iwans was the mentor that I worked with the most. There was a time where we took a break. She needed to take a break from working, and then we started working together again. One of the things that we had the opportunity to do as a mentor-apprentice team is attend the SHI Kusti Institutes here in Juneau, and that was such a wonderful thing to have the opportunity to do. We went through mentor-apprentice training with Leanne Hinton and followed, the book along as we were doing our work as best as we could. And in between the time when Quigai Iwans wanted to take a break, I had the opportunity to work with Kung Skis, who was another one of my Hadkil teachers, and Claude Morrison, Hinu Yats Hade Kis Tlingit. And I would go to Heidelberg and work with him, and he was such a gentleman. Anything that I would ask him about, he would, help me out with translations and stuff. And that's one thing I wanted to mention too, that the elders that I had the privilege to work with and learn from, they were all very dedicated to teaching what they could in the time that we had. And one of the things that Miju is his nickname, most people know him by, he said more than once, he'd say, I wish we would have started this work long ago. And I would tell him, well, we're doing it now. So anyway, one of my best memories about him is that I was there for a week one time, and we decided to do a hands-on activity where it would be in immersion as best as I could, but we cooked venison stew one day, and that was really a lot of fun. And I would, say some things, and then he would correct me if I didn't say it properly, but he was very gentle about his correction. And then I was able, after working with Miju, this here is, she may not need an introduction, but Ilskalis, Hinu Hadkis Olkiang. Ilskalis is her name, and Dr. Dolores Churchill, Hinu Yats Hade Kish Kiang. My daughter and I both had the opportunity to work with Ilskalis for a short time in 2010, and those of you that know Ilskalis know that she's a very busy woman, and because she not only is a fluent speaker of Hadkil, but she is a world-renowned weaver, and so she travels a lot. And but she is still my teacher, and we've done some great projects together. I think she's one of my biggest cheerleaders. Anyway, she had phoned me one time, and she said, Linda, I was asked to translate this play, and I was wondering if you could help me. And so I told her, sure. So she would come to KIC, where I was working at the time, and we worked together on this, and we found out it was a transcription for a full-length movie, and we were so surprised about that. And then since then, we've worked together on translating a children's book as well. So I'm very honored to still have her as my teacher. Ilskadei Uijung, Primrose Adams, Hinu Yats Hade Kishkiang. Primrose is my auntie. She's my mother's first cousin, and I had the honor and privilege to work with her at the family center in Old Masset, and that's where they had a language nest for young children from birth to preschool age. And this model was really nice because they would encourage parents to come to learn along with their children. And before the children and parents would come to the program, some of us apprentices got to sit with my auntie and Stephen Brown and learn some new things from them, translations of things. And speaking of Stephen Brown, this is Stephen Brown. His Hadkil name is Hadkil Skada Laiga. And I felt very honored to have some time to sit with him, because one of the things that he had done well, first he taught in the schools in Old Masset, and he realized that the children, they're learning language at school, but when they go home, they're not using it anymore. And so that's how he became involved with the family center, because parents were involved. But after that, he took young people into his home and mentored them throughout the day, and then they, would go home and use the language with their children. And so he was very picky about who he would mentor. And I was just really lucky that I got to go with my cousin Candace Weir White, and then also Jess Kwan. I would tag along with them during their time with Chinny Stephen. One of the challenges is, that was just coming to mind, when we're second language learners, one of the things that is a challenge is we don't have the sounds of our traditional language, because, English was our first language. And I had actually years and years ago, I had someone say, "You sound like a white woman." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I was all proud about trying to say something in Haida. And then I was like, okay, I really need to practice now. And but so there are different variations of language too, and the way things are pronounced. Chinny Stephen, he spoke the old Hadkil, and so because of the different variations, I had to try to remember which way each person spoke so that I could speak their variation along with them. And since Chinny Stephen's variation was a little bit more different than others, I really had to work on that and listen to his recordings often. And finally one day he said, "You're starting to sound like Haida." So, yeah, so another thing I just want to mention real quick is that years ago, Chinny Stephen, he thought ahead of time and started recording himself saying different phrases in Hadkil. And I believe he did like 22 tapes. He started back when we were recording on cassette tapes. And one of the things that he would have us do is listen to the tape, and then he left enough space in there where the student can repeat what he said. And when I would get to the point where I could say the phrase that he said before he would say it again, I was pretty excited. But us learners and teachers, we still use his tapes today. And Aji Uyang Uijung Lau Di Hadkils Adadala Ega Egan Claude Jones Hinu Yats Hadekish Ul Kagan. Claude Jones, I was fortunate to spend many hours with him as well in Old Masset. One of the things that I did most of during this time, and this could be a challenge, and it's a success, but then in some ways I wish we could have done it a little bit differently. And the reason I say that is because of the few speakers that we had at the time. They excuse me, I got to get my thoughts together. we didn't know how long we would have them. And so when I was working with Chinny Claude, I felt really rushed about just documenting as much as the language as I could. And I would have specific, translations that I would ask him for, and we would do, hands-on things. But one of the things that I really missed is just having someone speak to me in Haadkil. So, but for some of the mentors that I had, it was kind of hard for them to do that because they knew that I wouldn't be understanding what they were saying, but I would, tell Chinny Claude, I would tell him, that's what I need to hear the language. And so he used to tell stories about his fishing days. And when I was in Old Masset, it was such an honor and privilege. We would go to evening classes together. I'd go pick him up and really try to get other people to come as well. And again, he really helped out with anything that I would ask him on how to translate things. And one of the things that I really had a hard time doing, because the position of something in Haadkil is different than it is in English, and I would always get it backwards. And so I should mention this too about students that I have. I find that I teach my students things that were difficult for me as a learner. I want them to learn it right away. And so that's actually something that's coming up in one of my classes now, is how to talk about things being on top of or under. In English, they're called prepositions, where in Haadkil, they're postpositions. And that's what got my English brain really confused. I have a picture of Chinny Claude here with the apple in his hand, because I learned how to say apple one way and he said it in another, and I never said it the way he liked to hear it. And so my friends and co-learners in Masset, they used to tease me, Skíl Jáadei, say apple. And I had been away from Old Masset for a while, and one of my friends sent me this picture of Chinny Claude holding up the apple. And I took it as that's the way that they were missing me. Uljus Uijung, Dr. Irma Lawrence, Hinu Yats Hade Kish Ul Kyagan. With Irma, with Uljus, I didn't have too much one-on-one time with her, but she was definitely an influence in my learning. And some of you may know that she also had help with writing the first dictionary of Haadkil, and then the Alaskan phrase book. She is the author of that. When I would go visit her, she was so cute. She would write sentences down in Haida for me, and she would send me home with it. And that's one thing she loved to do during her lifetime, is write phrases down, and she knew they would be used somewhere. And thankfully, Dr. Latchler had worked with her and helped to get the phrase book published. And so that's definitely one of the resources that we use as learners. And then when we're using some of the resources in my classes, I'll tell students, well, you can, to further, your ability to talk about other things, you can actually just replace words. Just use these sentences to help you make new sentences. And so one of the things that Irma did too, that she had transcribed many gospel songs in Hudkill, and she, in our community, and probably all around Southeast, because she was an ANS member. She was very well known for her singing voice, and she received a Doctor of Letters degree for the work that she did with the language, and we had a big ceremony in Ketchikan, and our mayor at the time, his name slips my mind all of a sudden. He signed a proclamation that May 1st is Irma Lawrence Day. So that's pretty big. But and then some of the mentors, some of them, maybe I didn't work, one-on-one with them, but we were in groups where we worked together, and this is Yaadei and Appeal, Yaats Haadei Ul Kyagan. She's from Heidelberg, and I worked with her when we were working on the kindergarten to grade 2 curriculum, and so we had very specific things that we wanted to include in the curriculum, and poor Annie, everybody calls her Granny Annie. She was known as everybody's Granny Annie, and I would repeat some of the things she would say, and she couldn't hear my S's. And so sometimes she would, when she couldn't hear it, she would really accentuate her S. And so when I would listen to my recordings afterwards, I was, oh my goodness. And I think some other people can't hear my S's, but Granny was so kind as well. I'm just so blessed to have had time with the elders. I wasn't going to do this. I'm not. Iskwai nan uijung Mary Swanson Yaats Haadei Ul Kyagan. Mary is another one of my aunties from Old Masset, and sweetest lady. When she'd come to Ketchikan, she always came to visit my Nana. She wasn't only a mentor in Hudkill, but in cultural ways. And one time she came to Ketchikan, and she stayed with me. I think that was after my Nana and Chana passed. And I told her, Auntie Mary, there's several of our family members, our clan members that don't have Haida names, and it'd be really nice to know some names that they could receive sometime. And so she had me write some names down, and this was quite probably almost 20 years ago. And this past summer, my clan sisters and their children hosted a name giving in Heidelberg, and those names were finally given out. And so, so in fact, a lot of my mentors not only taught Hudkill, but they taught cultural things. I also want to mention some of the silent speakers that I had worked with and learned from. Viola Burgess, who is her Haida name Guda Hagens, and I just learned a little while ago that Mr. Nat Kong has a Haida name, and I don't know why I never knew that before, but Haida La'ai in Hadkil means warrior, and Chuck Nat Kong was a Green Beret, and I thought that was a very fitting name for him. And was Elma Cook and my cousin Leona Clow and my auntie Merle Anderson of Old Masset. They some could speak a little more Haida than the others, but some say, you know, I understand the language, but I just can't speak it. And so we really, you know, started relying on the silent speakers. And so if, you know, you have access to silent speakers, they are also a wealth of information. And even if it's like, if you want to practice speaking your language with them, they can let you know if you're saying things properly. So they're, you know, very helpful as well. I want to also mention other mentors that I've had that maybe, you know, it wasn't for Hadkil, but you see Donna Mae Shugaina is up here on the screen. I met Donna Mae, or Shugaina, I think it was in, actually in the early 2000s, I met her at one of the Sealaska Kusti Institutes, and I had attended some of her classes to not so much learn Shmelgiach, but her teaching methods. It was recommended by a linguist that was working for SHI at the time, and I got hooked. She makes learning so much fun, and I also learned some Shmelgiach at the time, and I consider her my mentor to this day. And Dr. Jordan Latchler Yathkangtunga, when he started work for SHI years ago, he reached out to Aukun's Sherilyn Bell Holter and myself at the time, and he is the one that headed the kindergarten to grade 2 curriculum. And he was pretty amazing. He learned our language within a couple of years. I wish I had that kind of, I was able to do that. But he started teaching classes, and so a lot of my learning was through academics, through Yathkangtunga. And then also Kuyang is Ben Hinuyatshadekishkiang. Ben, who is much younger than myself, he has also been my mentor. He learned through his Chana, Claude Morrison, how to speak the language, and I'm very proud of him for what he's doing. The first time I met him, I believe he was 14 years old, and it was at the Sealaska Kusti Institute, which would be awesome if they could start those again. As you hear, I have very fond memories of that and meeting these key people through the Kusti Institute. And even at that time, Uyang, you know, you could tell that he was going to become a speaker, and he has done just that. And then Marianne Ignace is one of my mentors. She has she's very strongly connected to Old Masset, and has been learning and teaching the Hadkil language with the old folks there, and people that she learned from actually had, you know, passed before I became involved in learning Hadkil, and so she's a very she's got a wealth of knowledge in the Haida language. And then she was also my professor at SFU. And next to her is Lawrence Bell Skíl. He was one of the last fluent speakers from Old Masset, and I had the opportunity to work with him a bit. He really liked to hear, he thought it was cute because I was speaking a little bit of the Old Masset variation. But he was always such a happy guy. And Ishkinung, April Churchill, she's been a mentor of mine for many years through a dance group, actually. And she had Quigai Iwants teach the children how to introduce themselves in Haida. And at that time, when she was teaching, parents weren't allowed to go in the room where the children would have their practice, because she knew that when parents are around, how children behave differently, and they would listen to her when parents weren't in the room. But so anyway, I had asked, can I start learning how to kill with the kids? And so I did. I got to go and learn some Haida language with the children, and that's kind of one way that Quigai Iwants and I started working together, and we were actually doing it on our own for a while. So I'm just really blessed with, you know, so many first language speakers that I worked with, and so many wonderful mentors, and I'm hoping I'm not forgetting anyone. And I just want to show this picture from a Haida language gathering that we had here in Juneau in 2016 at the new Alaska State Museum. We were the very first ones to use their conference room there, and we have people here from Skidegit, Haida Gwaii, Old Masset, and around southeast Alaska. And actually, there's a woman in the picture here who is from California who I didn't meet at that time, but now she's happens to be one of my students. So that's one good thing about teaching language over Zoom, is that we're able to reach people that live in other areas that wouldn't have the opportunity to learn their language otherwise. So how are we doing on? Okay. So I also wanted to mention, well, as Nagatsi said, you know, my focus is on Hadkil, but I also advocate as best as I can for the Tlingit and Shmelgiach languages. I support both as well. And some of the people that I had met at the Kusti Institutes, the few that I could remember right off the top of my head is Ruth Demmert, Florence Shakely, David Katzik, Nora Downhauer, as the first language speakers for Tlingit. I know there's others, but I couldn't remember right off the top of my head. And the second language learners of Tlingit, Hune, and which Hune, I'm so proud of what you do for our languages as well. You're a very strong advocate, and we all appreciate that. Hans Chester, Dathjani, and Yarrow, I got to know those younger people during that time, and we still see each other now and then, and I always get a greeting in Hadkil from hands, which is, it's fun. And then even with Alfie, you know, he greets me in Hadkil and sometimes in Shmelgyak, and I know a little bit where I can reply back. And then I mentioned Donna Mae Shugaina earlier, Norma Fawcett, who was Ashley Dow's, not only her mother, but her mentor, and a few others in Ketchikan, John Reese and Wilbur Reese, Sarah Booth of Metlakatla, and Gertrude Johnson of Gitz-Han. I have for me, it's a good memory of Sarah. I really didn't know her that well, but my husband and I were going to all-native basketball tournament in Prince Rupert, and we happened to be on the same ferry as Sarah, and I sat by her, and she was the first language speaker of the Shmelgyak language, and we were comparing, you know, Hadkil and Shmelgyak, and we both enjoyed that so much. And so the second language learners that I can think of right now that I would like to also give honor to is Ashley Dow. Michael D'Angeli, David R. Boxley, Godemt Eben, Alfie Shagop, and Nancy Barnes. It's not always been, you know, easy in reclaiming our languages, and that's, so I'm, you know, I honor all of our first language speakers that took the time to pass it on to those that are interested. And to those that are not only reclaiming, but perpetuating our languages. And so I don't know about other second language learners and those that are teaching. Gosh, sorry. I think one of the things, I don't know if how others feel, but one of the things that I have thought about myself, because I'm not a first language speaker, is that I think of myself paving the way for the new learners, and I try to do what I can to make their paths a little bit easier. And one of the ways that I found that helps a little bit is not using linguistic terms, using actual, you know, I guess it would, excuse me, layman's terms. Because when, I mean, even for me as a learner, when I would hear linguistics terms, I'm like, what? Could you say that in English, please? And so I try to do that and just really encourage people. We, as learners, don't always say things exactly how they should be said. But say, for example, because of my own experience, if someone is mispronouncing something, then I'll say "ong," and then I'll repeat it so, you know, students can hear it again. And try to be, as gentle as possible, because I don't want to discourage anybody from learning their language. And, only be as supportive as possible by providing resources that we have from even, the first peoples that made contact with, not first peoples, the Europeans that made contact with our people, and they had, their own way of writing things in our languages, but we've learned to decipher those, and being able to use those resources along with the newer ones that we have. So just real quick here, got to get to... Oh, one of the things I wanted to mention too is to be open-minded as you're learning a language. There, in the past, in my experience, people talk about different dialects, and I learned from elders in Skidegit that not one is more correct than the other. They are correct for the location of where the peoples are from. And, we shouldn't be talking poorly about people and the way that their family speaks and, expresses themselves. So one of the challenges that we have now is the lack of teachers. And for Hadkil, there are very, very few, but I have hope because there are some of my students that are working towards getting their teaching certificates, and they're ready to go as soon as that, they can finish that program. And so that's it's very exciting to, have that hope, and having young people start taking over. And unfortunately, some of you might be able to relate to this as well, the crabs in the bucket mentality. When some people see others doing good things, they want to, make it more difficult for you. And just my encouragement for that is to not let it get to you, and just keep moving forward, because we don't have time, to be arguing amongst one another, and that it takes up too much time. I've seen that happen in the past. Let's see. Oh, one of the challenges, I'm going to try to finish up here, it's almost time anyway, that when I first started learning Hadkil, and I had I was working for an organization, the council really wanted me to be teaching, and I wasn't ready yet. But those of us that were working there, we had to start teaching, and so it was just, I was a step ahead of the students, and that can be a challenge as well. So I just would really ask that, everyone join me in honoring our first language speakers, our speakers that we have now, and our future speakers that are coming up for all 3 languages. And I'll just say one more thing before we're finished up here. I keep referring back to the SHI Kusti Institute. And I'm doing that because it's going to lead into a song that I'm going to share. One year, I don't recall which year, but we were busy with classes for 12 hours a day. And I recall being outside of one of the buildings out there at the university campus where those courses were held, and I was complaining about being tired. I was like, oh my gosh, we start 9 o'clock in the morning and we're done at 9 o'clock at night. And it hit me, I'm like, oh my gosh, here's all these elders around me and none of them are complaining. I just better be quiet. So Quigai Iwans and I we were staying at the student housing, and I started thinking about, you know, what I had noticed, that I was the only one complaining. All the elders were just fine. So I wrote a few things down and I asked her, could you please help me translate this? I really want to compose a song. And so she helped me with some words, but I couldn't think of a tune or a drum beat for several years, and finally Quigai Iwans had suggested that I ask Vernon Williams of Haida Gwaii, because he's a song composer, and so I did that, and I gave him a recording of the words and dropped him off at his house, and he phoned me like 5 minutes later. It's ready. I'm like, oh. So I want to share the song with you, and it's honoring the elders song, and it, just like language evolves, the song has evolved a little bit since the original. So I'll go ahead and sing it. So the translation is, thank you, precious elders. Thank you for leaving behind your knowledge. We have respect for you. Thank you, precious elders. And when I was in Heidelberg, and we would sing the song at gatherings there, Elma Cook used to love the song, and we'd ask people to stand up in honor of the elders, and she would be standing up, she'd be dancing around, and she just really enjoyed the song. So I'll go ahead and, yes, if you can stand, how dalang kaya kuyasis gin an dalang unsits eat dalang taslas dalang an dalang yakdangang how dalang kaya kuyasis hayo ho hiyo heya
Yankee for log, you can not Atrain up, I asked was a team. Kanahoe has to ye bachet with a tish. Achtuya came for a huskasatini. Kashach toashko, kawayet yos kiya, you can enjoy you have patan and cheese like you can. I just want to thank you for your words and acknowledge the strength that you brought. And there's a lot of wonderful faces that I saw. It makes me very lonely for a lot of the people that we work with. And I'm really grateful that you acknowledge the work that comes with carrying this knowledge to the next generations. And I want to thank you for your work in doing that. And I also want to share a phrase that Ruth Deborah came up with for some work that we do. I guess it was about a year ago, because I was saying, she said, that's a bit much. I said, basketball is our life. She said, basketball is our joy. And I thought of that phrase because I was at a basketball game in Craig, sitting next to Alma Cook. It was so wonderful. But she loved basketball so much that when something really exciting happened, she would elbow me in the ribs. And we're about in the second quarter, and I'm thinking, how am I going to tell this elder that she's hurting me? But I got a little ache of love and joy. And I know we got a lot of work to do. And I think we're getting to a place of strength. And I just want to say there's two other phrases I thought of. One was, that was the late, great Norman James, who said, it's as if my brain got tangled in a seine net. And he was a wonderful speaker of Tlingit. But once we started talking about how grammar works, he was getting very confused. He could say all those things. So I think you're on a very key point that we need to move away from complicated terminology and just really get to what the things do. But then another phrase would be, is we're going to untangle it. And it also means we're going to follow the footprints of our ancestors. So I guess my question for you is, if someone wants to learn Haida, like right now, they want to learn Hatkil right now, where do they go to get started?
In Ketchikan, oh gosh, I forgot to mention, we have a young man who is teaching Hatkil in Ketchikan, Harley Bell Holter, actually at the high school right now, but I think after school is out, he plans on doing some teaching. And then University of Alaska, Southeast. We actually have 3 different levels of Hatkil taking place this semester. I'm not sure. I can't think of any other classes at this time. Oh yes, how duck juice. Oh gosh, how could I? Yeah, I was so nervous I forgot to mention some people. Duck juice is teaching in the noontime, and then does he have another MOCC coming up?
Maybe.
Yeah.
He did his at the end of the year, last year, so.
Okay, yeah, so duck juice, also known as Robert Yates, and sorry, that's all I could think of right now. And then I need to make some time to mention this, because one of the things I do say is that if our children start speaking our language, then our language is going to survive. And I wanted to mention a couple of families that are doing a really good job of teaching their children the language. And one would be Kuyang. He teaches his children the language, and they use it, especially Healing. I've heard him use it a lot. And then Íitl Hannah, she has been a learner of Hadkil for some time, and she taught her son when she was even carrying him. So he is, I don't know what we would call him, a second generation of first language learner. Yeah. Yeah, and one more that I can think of right now that I need to say, that I mentioned that not all of my mentors were actually Hadkil teachers, but Alkun Sherilyn Bell-Holter of Heidelberg, when I worked with her, I learned so much about the culture through her as well, and as we were both learning and working on the language.
Are there any other questions? Go.
Haa Łagigyetgm, and Haa Łagigyetgm the one. So I just said in Somali, kind of have mercy on me for having the audacity to say you're a very important person to me. You are my teacher, you are my mentor. You're my first Hadkil teacher, and I learned so much about teaching language with you that I use. Now I'm teaching Somali, and so you are one of those mentors that you have for me. And I also, like Hune, I really like what you said about let's not worry so much about the ergatives and transitive verbs, but how do we communicate with each other in our language? And that's the best way. When I learn that way, I walk away feeling good. When I'm focused on the linguistic terms, I walk away with uncomfortable feelings. So I'm starting to grasp that idea in the way that I share language now. So it's good for us to know all that other stuff, but I'm going to leave that in somebody else's hands now, because there are better people suited for that kind of thing. So and I also really, really appreciate you lifting up all of our languages. I love it when I see you and we interact in both of our languages together, and there's a handful of people I do that with, and that's how it should be. So just wanted to express those things. I really appreciated you sharing your mentors with us, your teachers. Whenever you invoked, I could feel them standing next to you. So
see if I
Looks like all of our attendees online are just saying thank you so much and Haa for being here. Are there any other questions in the room? Okay, if not, Haa Skíl Jáadei for your wonderful lecture and song. Our next lecture will be Duck Juice Rob Yates at 12 noon on March 19th. He will be presenting a lecture titled Enduring Language Work Has Its Rewards. On Friday, March 22nd, we'll host Íitl Kuníisii for her lecture titled Scholar to Teacher, Building Your Mentor Team. Thank you, honorable people, for joining us today. Language learning resources can be found on SHI's website and our YouTube channel. Haa.
everyone for coming.